Hi, my name is Caleb, and I'm here today to just share something that I believe God has put on my heart today. So if you see me looking down, I'm just looking at my notes. But I feel like today I went to church and I left church feeling just I don't know, kind of stirred a little bit. If you've ever been in a church service and just kind of felt like God is kind of tugging at your heartstrings a little bit, that's kind of how I left church today. And so I came home, the kids down for a nap, the house is quiet, and I thought it was a good opportunity to just kind of pray. And so right then and there, I just kind of fell to my knees and I just started praying before God. And in that moment, pretty soon after praying, this thought just kind of came to me, and it was just this concept of strength in numbers. Um, and right as that thought came to me, I immediately started to try and think of an analogy to kind of illustrate that. At first, I was thinking about an avalanche. A single snowflake, doesn't have much power, but when you get a whole bunch of snowflakes together, it has extreme power. Um, but I know that snow is an inanimate object, and so we can't really relate to it too much. So I tried to personify that. And so then I started thinking about a video that I saw a while back, just kind of scrolling through, YouTube, watching random videos. And it was a video of an Amish community, and they made the decision to relocate one of their structures. And so they had what appeared to be like a pretty good sized barn outbuilding. I mean, this thing was massive, and they decided they were going to relocate it. And so they kind of jacked it up and ran some wooden beams, like a whole bunch of wooden beams, evenly spaced out all the way across the width of it. And then they got, what appeared to be at least tens, probably 100 or more men, adult men, to get on the inside of this barn and get positioned to where they could get a grip on those wooden beams. And then they were all just kind of doing like a deadlift, just lifting it up, and they got it up off the ground, and then they started walking it to where they wanted it. They walked it however far, and they got it to the right position and set it back down. And it made me think, if we equate that to that physical strength, if we compare that as an analogy to our spiritual strength, you could take the strongest person, like think of a bodybuilder, the world's strongest man. We all have seen those competitions. You take the world's strongest man, you say, hey, I want that barn, right there. Can you move it there for me? And he can go, try, as hard as he wants, all his might, and that thing's not going to budge, right? He's not going to succeed in lifting that barn and moving it, right? If you take any of those men that move that barn and you compare them side by side with the world's strongest man, they're not even going to compare, right? The strongest man is way stronger than any one of them. But collectively, together, they moved that barn with relative ease. And so if you equate that to spiritual strength, you could be the most devout Christian ever, just on fire for God and just, constantly, immersed in his word and his presence. And if you keep that to yourself, if you continue to go through life and just kind of exist and you're just, kind of isolated to yourself, you can still have that, strong faith and that strong relationship with God, but you're not going to be moving buildings, so to speak, metaphoric buildings. Um, that takes lots of people together with a concerted, very focused effort. Um, and so this concept of strength in numbers, um, I think as Christians, we're not meant to be going through life alone. Obviously everyone's on their own spiritual journey. And we should be seeking God in our personal lives. Um, but if your faith journey, if your relationship with God is strictly between you and God and it's not shared with others, I don't think you're doing it right, and I don't think you're being as effective as you could be. I wanted to talk about a couple other examples along the same lines of strength in numbers. So I'm a school teacher, and I played a video about earthquakes. I was teaching the kids about earthquakes, and there was a seismologist is basically talking about the ins and outs of earthquakes, how we measure them, how they happen. And at the end of the video, he takes, I believe it's called a seismograph. Don't crucify me if I got that wrong. I'm not an expert on earthquakes. But whatever instrument they use to measure the degree of an earthquake. And they brought one of those outside of a sports stadium. And they had that thing reading, the ground movements throughout the course of the football game. And whenever an exciting point in the game would happen, the fans would erupt, and you could actually see on the screen that the instrument was picking up on some activity. And I got to thinking, to continue this analogy, if you had that same stadium, the same instrument going, but you only had one fan in that stadium, they could be the most devout, loyal fan to that sports team ever. And they could be in that stadium cheering louder than any fan has ever cheered before. And no matter how loud they cheer, they could stomp their feet, clap, yell, scream, whatever. It's not going to register on that seismograph. It takes a stadium full of people collectively cheering at the same time for the same thing in order for it to be picked up on that seismograph. And it was interesting because when those exciting points would happen and the stadiums would erupt, you could see it. They basically caused like a mini earthquake. So that's interesting to highlight when fellow believers come together, with a focus to accomplish a task. We're able to move barns, when we come together in praise, which is essentially what sports fans are doing. They're praising their team. When we come together in praise, it's felt, like an earthquake, a spiritual earthquake occurs. So praising alone, that's all great. But when we come together, there's something um, exponentially more powerful when that occurs. Now, these last couple examples, so those two examples would be examples of what to do, organize to make something constructive happen, something that otherwise would not be made possible. But then also coming together to give praise to God collectively seems to bear more weight or have more of an impact than if we're just giving praise by ourselves. But these next couple examples are kind of examples of what not to do. So one example, and I apologize because I should have looked this up, but several months back, I believe it was in an Asian country. I can't remember what city or country it took place, but there was a crowd that was gathered in the streets. I think it was maybe for some kind of festival. But basically, people were just packed into the streets. And something happened, some kind of disturbance happened, and the crowd kind of panicked, and they all started trying to, move away from whatever the disturbance was, and the crowd just started, pushing into people. And so if you were one of the people further into the crowd, you don't even know what's going on. You don't know what event or disturbance is occurring. You just see people moving away from this direction, so you start to move away from that direction, and before you know it, you basically create a stampede of people. And at one point, this crowd kind of got funneled into a dead end. It was basically just an alleyway, and they got packed into this alley, and people got trampled to death. People literally died from this. I saw cell phone footage of the event, and there were big sized dudes that, were still getting pushed around by this crowd. And that just highlights the force of people when we come together. In this example, this crowd, they didn't have a shared focus. It wasn't a constructive focus. It was confusion. Nobody knew what was going on. They weren't working together with a positive goal in mind. And so this is an example of what can happen when you have a large mass of people or a population of people that are lost with no focus and no direction, no common goal, just confusion and chaos. People can be harmed spiritually in that. Um, and then the other example I want to talk about is a historic example, and I don't remember the year it happened, but I just remember hearing about it growing up, and it's happened since with other musicians or artists. But there was the band The Who, if you've ever heard of them before. They had a concert one year, and it was basically open seating, first come, first serve. And so, they were a really popular band. Lots of people were at this show, and they're waiting outside the gates, just camping out and just ready, like runners at a starting line, just trying to get the best spot they can. And so, you have a massive amount of people being funneled into this entryway, and it kind of bottlenecked, and people ended up being trampled to death in that instance as well. And so here you have another crowd, but unlike the crowd in the streets that was very confused, didn't even know what was going on, this crowd knew what was going on. They all had a shared focus. The focus was they're there to see, their favorite rock band, and they're trying to get the best seats they can be, but their focus is the wrong focus. Their focus is very self-centered. I'm gonna get to the best seat because I love this band. This, it's all about me, 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 right? I'm willing to push and shove and to get what I want. And so, yeah, they all had the same focus. They all had a shared focus, but it was the wrong focus. So, in my message today, I gave multiple examples, um, two examples of positive things that can come when we come together with a shared focus. Um, God can do big things through any one of us. But when we come together and we pull together our strengths and our resources, the list of things that can be accomplished just grows exponentially. And so I encourage you, if you don't have any fellow believers in your life that are kind of pouring into you, and that are, that you're helping them, they're helping you grow stronger in your faith, and just do more and better things, for the kingdom of God. If you don't have those people in your life, find it. If you're already in church, that's a very easy way. Just get plugged in. Sign up to be on the service team. Right there, you're already contributing to something bigger than yourself. If you have an idea of something you can do to honor God, glorify God, do it. Don't shy away from it. And this could be something so little, just building somebody up, speaking kindness into somebody's life, showing them God's love through a small act of kindness or service. Any one of those things is an example of building someone up and contributing to something bigger than yourself. So I hope that this message spoke to you in some way. I know that the thought really, I was able to find something constructive from that thought, but the takeaway is just strength in numbers, the importance of surrounding yourself with fellow believers, but then also bringing other people along for the ride too. If you see people that are stagnant in their faith, grab them, yank them aboard, say, hey, let's go do this. The time is now. Um, it could be starting up a group, maybe at your church. It could be a book club. Go through a book of the Bible. I have a group of guys, and we get together and we talk about wins and losses. It's more of like an accountability kind of group, but we make sure that we hold our feet to the fire, so to speak. Look for that. There's a million ways to do this, but strength in numbers. That's the message for today. Anyways, thanks for listening, guys. Have a great day. Love you, and peace.